Welcome to That Doesn't Suck. Today I'm just doing a different intro into this video because it kind of started right with where it left off with my yeast experiment from a previous episode. What we're doing is I made a yeast starter from commercial bread flour and one from fresh milled flour. And the fresh milled flour one took off, did great. 2 weeks, it was ready to roll. They already did a couple loaves of bread, worked good, and it was just like my previous one. So what I decided to, because the other one wasn't showing any signs, I fed it with 1 round of fresh milled flour, and then I went back to just feeding it daily with commercial flour. And it took off like gangbusters, and all of a sudden it came alive. After a couple weeks, I finally have gotten around to baking the loaf of bread with that. So in this one, I make 2 loaves of bread, one with fresh milled flour and one with commercial flour to see how that does. And so now I'll take you through the steps and show you how I did it.
All right, this is day 2 of the starter. You can see it actually started doing something. I don't know what the deal is. So I'm gonna let this ride for one more day because it's actually above, you can see it's above the rubber band. It hasn't done that in quite some time. And well, that's Bob, and that's what's left of the other one. I still have to feed both of them, Bob and Haley. So we're gonna let that go one more day and I'll feed it tomorrow. So I'm gonna treat it like I was making a new yeast starter, and we'll see what happens. Because what I'm really curious about is whether it will develop different flavors than the other, being in a different medium using the commercial flour. Okay, it's day 3 of restarting Lily. So now for the first time today, we're going to feed it with commercial flour, not the fresh milled flour. You can see it did grow. It almost doubled in size. So we're going to see what it does. Here we are, day 4. And look at that. I fed him yesterday with the commercially available bread flour, and that guy is going great guns now after feeding him a couple of days ago with some fresh milled flour. And that's Bob. Now Bob, I only did a 35 gram feed yesterday. I was cutting back because I don't want it to, I just don't want to waste as much flour. I don't think I need as big a starter. So both doing good. So we're going to keep feeding him for at least another week. And then we'll make a loaf of bread and see what happens. Here we are for day number 5. And you can see this is how far risen, and that's where it started. Now we're still up quite a bit. It's amazing how much this has come alive since giving it 1 feeding with fresh milled flour. And then it's been 2 others with white flour, regular commercial flour. All right, time to feed another day. Okay, day 6. You can see we're still doubled right there, but it has grown up to here, and it's going great guns. So I may be ready to bake with it this week. So since we just added yeast to it, maybe it just activated the yeast that were in there, but it's looking better. All right, time to feed. All right, there we are with Lily. You can see she has made it up to like here. I think it's about ready. I'm gonna do either tomorrow or maybe sometime later this week, make a loaf of bread with her. But now it's time to feed her. Welcome to That Doesn't Suck. Today we're gonna finally wind up our experiment with the yeast. Now I finally got, and there's several videos showing you the progression of the yeast since I split them off and baked with the fresh milled flour yeast. The white flour yeast, the bread flour yeast, the regular bread flour, which was white Lily, which I just called Lily, took off great guns after one time, instead of feeding it with more white flour, I fed it with fresh milled flour in the same ratio, and it took off great guns ever since. And it's been tripling in size. So it's been really doing well. So I'm doing today we're baking a loaf with 550 grams of bread flour, of the white lily bread flour, and we're using, I'm starting with 375 grams of water because, as I've said before, the absorption rate for commercial flour is much less than regular flour. So, because the fresh milk flour is going to use a lot more water. So anyway, we're doing that. So I'm starting with 375 grams, and I've got a couple more bottles or bowls filled with 25 grams of water. And then we're going to use 2 teaspoons of salt, and then 115 grams of the yeast starter. Now, we're doing another loaf, and this is the first time I'm using more of the commercial flour starter, Lily, but I'm going to do it in a fresh milled flour loaf as well. So for that one, we've got 450 grams of hard white ground, and we've got 100 grams of spelt in there, which is a really nice yeast, or a really nice mix that my wife and I both like. And then, 2 teaspoons of salt, 450 grams of water, and then another 115 grams of the yeast starter. So we've got that. We fed him last night and got it all up to speed, so he was growing great guns this morning. So now we're going to mix this all up and get started on it. Okay, so we're going to start by mixing up our commercially available flour. It's called the Lily. So we're going to put our yeast in the bowl. And before I measure these out, I usually just put a little water in the bowl because that kind of works as a lubricant to help this come out a little cleaner. And then we're going to add our 375 grams of water, and we're going to mix these. Try to get that broke down because that'll help. The more you mix the water and the yeast, the more distributed it will be in the flour. And once again, I'm using cool water, not cold, but cool, and it's not hot. Because I don't really want to do this quickly. I like to let everything take its time, and so I prefer the cold proofing method through the day, and then and then of course after we do our final staging, we put it in the fridge at night. I'm going to add the salt. I prefer to do this all at one time. I mean, the yeast is full grown, everything's working, so just get this in, get everything mixed. Now, one thing you can do if you're trying to be a little quieter when you're mixing your flour, you can just get a dish towel and put under the bowl, because we have the granite countertops, and this will just kind of cushion things. And I'm not fond of that sound going over because I just don't like, sound like it's going to want to break the bowl. I think I'm going to add another 25 grams of water. So that's going to bring us up to 400. And I think that will be fine. And I'm going to go through, because they're different with fresh milled, or between fresh milled flour and the bread flour, different thoughts of what to do to create the gluten. But I'm still going to let it hydrate for an hour before we start the stretch and folds. Yeah, you can see it's nice and sticky outside, but at least it's absorbing the water. And I'm just basically doing folds with the spatula now, trying to at least get a jump start on some gluten. And just make sure everything's mixed in. Okay, now I'm going to cover that and clean my spatula off, and we're going to mix up the other bowl. Now we're back. We're going to get this other one mixed up, and you'll notice I'm actually decided to use the plastic bowl instead of my mason bowls. So I've got a couple other things coming in today that I'm doing, and so I'm going to be using my 3 big bowls, and then I need another one. Now, some of you might be tempted to say that you should not use plastic. Plastic is bad. Never use plastic because of all the microplastics. Well, they recently came out with new information on those plastic studies where they said nobody in the world is without plastic in their body. Everybody's going to die. We're going to die from plastics. We're slowly turning into plastics. Well, it turns out the study was flawed. Imagine that. Their data was not right because they can't reliably test for plastics in the body. What they thought was plastics in the body, or what they were claiming is plastics in the body, is other substances that are naturally occurring in the body that was masking their tests. So, once again, all things in moderation. We've been using plastic since it was invented and became popular in the 50s, and they started in the 40s. They had some other things that were plastic-like, but weren't quite like that. There were precursors, but plastic is fine. But if you want to use glass and you want to use ceramic for everything, get rid of all your plastic, good on you. But I'm going to keep doing what I do and keeping things simple. The only thing I will say about plastic is I don't like, they make plastic fermenters for beer brewing, and I'm not fond of those. And the only reason, it's got nothing to do with how it ferments. Everything ferments just fine in it. The only issue I have is that over time using them, they become scratched. And in brewing, bacteria is a total killer and is an exponential problem that can ruin batches of beer and lots of time that you've spent making it, because it's a time consuming project. But that bacteria gets into those fine cracks and scratches, and then it can get into the beer and you really can't clean it out. So I don't like to use plastic in those cases. But I still have other plastic things I use. And then, with plastic, you also, in that process, you need to replace them every so often. So, but it's got nothing to do with that study. But when it comes to those things, I always go back to 2 studies in my mind. Eggs and salt. Eggs are bad, eggs are good, eggs are the death of you, eggs are the building block of life. Same with salt. There we go, we're getting this all mixed. We're just gonna make it a nice shaggy dough. See, I'm folding it over and then pressing it down. So it's kind of like kneading, but you're keeping your hands from getting all gooed up and keeping all the dough in the bowl. All right, now we're gonna cover that and let it sit for an hour. That's where these little plastic covers are great. All right, so we're back. Gonna wet our hands. We're gonna start the stretch and folds. Yeah, this has to create a lot of gluten. Now this is the first loaf of bread I have made in 20 years with bread flour. I had done it years and years ago. I've anywhere between 15 to 20 years, somewhere around there. So see how this works for me. So I'm just keeping a bowl here beside me to try to keep my hands moist. Because I like doing that. I've discovered that's a better method than going over the sink every time, especially when you're doing multiple loaves of bread. Just change the water out occasionally. All right, we'll cover that. Back up. Now we'll grab the fresh milled flour version. See, they both look very similar, although you can definitely, I can feel a textural difference in the two. This feels more coarse. That one was definitely much smoother by the time we got done, but you saw how shaggy it looked at the start. So I'm just gonna pull that apart a little bit. Yeah, you can feel the structure, but that structure, you can feel it forming by the time you're done, but then that structure is going to loosen up over the next half hour. So now we'll go to half hour. We have 3 more to do. All right, we're back. Yeah, that baby is sticky. Give some stretch and folds. It's a much looser dough than I'm used to dealing with, but it tightens up pretty quick. So I think it's glutening up fine. I think you have to be a little more aggressive with the fresh milled flour to create the gluten, but it starts pretty easy on these. All right, I'm gonna let that go, cover it back up. All right. Yeah, it definitely feels a whole lot different with the fresh milled flour. You can see the color difference because you get some of the speckling. You see that up close. Get some of the speckling from the grind, the different parts of the flour, because you're getting the whole
flour kernel used. And this is where I definitely like the towel underneath with the stretch and folds, because it keeps that bowl from slapping down. Yeah, the structure's going pretty good gangbusters here. All right, we're gonna let that one go. And we'll be back in a half hour. We got 2 more to go. Go, Dean, go. You can do it. There we go. All right, here we are back with the fresh milled flour. I'm gonna stretch and fold it. This is the 3rd one. So we have 1 more for this afterwards. Yeah, it's really starting to gluten up. You can feel that structure working. All right, we'll leave that alone, cover them back up. Now we'll get the commercial. Yeah, so I've never done, oh yeah, that's a whole different texture. It just feels way looser. I mean, if you can tell it's getting structure, it's getting gluten. Just, you know, to me, it feels a whole lot different because I don't do commercial yeast or commercial flour. All right, I'll cover him back up. Another half hour for its final one. All right, this is the, we're back for the 4th and final one. And you can see, it's just, this is a gelatinous goo. The structure is very, the feel of it and look of it is very much how the yeast looks when it's in the bottle, other than the, you know, the air bubbles when you start it. So it's just a whole different feel. I'm not sure I like it. Okay, so now we're gonna let that bulk proof for quite some time. And here we are with the other one. Now the only difference between these two, you know, we're using fresh milled flour, but we're using the same yeast, which is the commercial, done in commercially available bread flour. Now, all right, we're looking good. I just want to see what the flavor profile, because I can judge that if I do it in a fresh milled floury loaf because I'm used to eating it. And I can see if there's any differences in the structure with my traditional loaf of bread, which is basically why I'm doing this, because I know there'll be a difference between the two. I just want to see what the difference is between this and my regular stuff, if that yeast is different at all. If maybe it pulled some different characteristics because we made it in a different medium, or harvested it, I should say. We didn't make it. God made it. All right, be back when we're done proofing and ready to shape. All right, here we are. We're playing kind of fast and loose. I've wet the bowl down. I'm trying to get a bunch of things done. I'm still trying to record this bread going in. So there's a little flour in the bowl. And we're gonna get this out, so I think it's proofed. There. That came out pretty good. Yep, this dough reminds me of the blob. All right. You can see why people do the origami with these. It's just a whole different feel. All right, we're gonna put that in the fridge. I'm gonna cover it all night. And I don't think my other ones are fully ready yet, so I'm gonna check those, but we've got the commercial flour in there. All right, and I just looked and the other one is ready as well. It's only, I just stuck it in the fridge. So now we're gonna do the same thing. Get this out of the bowl. There. Stretch it out. Funny, this one feels different with that yeast as well. I'm just pinching it off on the back. Stick it in the banneton, cover it with the plastic, and we'll let that go all night. All right, there you go. Those are the commercial flour loaves, fresh out of the bread. The one on the left is the fresh milled flour. The one on the right is the commercial flour, and they're both made with the yeast starter made with commercial flour. So later when they're all cooled, we'll cut into them and see the difference. We've got our bread cooled, and now we're gonna slice it up and take a look at it. This one I'm cutting first is the fresh milled flour. See how that looks inside. It's my typical, it's fairly close grain, but it did a good job. Now the way I typically like to slice this, I'll slice that in half, and then we'll just slice off. And this way you can make small sandwiches, or it's perfect to have with dinner. Okay, see that slices quickly, fairly easy. Now this, for once I did have it sit overnight. I didn't do anything with it. I got busy yesterday and had a lot of stuff going on. Oh yeah, that one looks more like the conventional flour loaves that I've seen. And we're just going to slice that. Now when I baked these, I baked them in a hot oven at 450, and I did this 7-minute slice. I'll just grab a couple pieces so you can see the difference in the look of the two. Quite a bit. This one is a lot more open, and this one, you know, you see the lighter difference because this is hard white flour mixed with spelt, and this is, you know, just 100% bread flour. And that tastes much the same as all the others I've done. So I don't think there's a huge difference in the yeast. It did smell slightly more tart. Yeah, and that tastes good too. It tastes like any other sourdough, but they're all good. So that doesn't suck. So if bread flour is your choice, have at it, make great bread. If fresh milled flour is your choice, same thing. Thanks for watching.